How is everyone doing? All right. We're ready for some news. Let me. Now, I know I said last week was going to be our last day on YouTube, but there was a couple people that classically comment on my videos that watch them afterwards, and they didn't comment on those. So I wanted to make sure that if that was you, if you're one of the people that watch them after they're recorded, I wanted to make sure that you got that because there's a couple of you that have been around for a really long time that don't actually watch them live, and I wanted you to know where you can find them. So, anyways, that's all I'm doing it for another one. So hopefully you see this and you know that I'm going to move most of the live streaming to Twitch. Um, and that being said, there is a place on YouTube where I'm putting all of these. So these are going to dump into that channel. So there, you can watch them after the fact still. So, anyways, just wanted to let you guys know that. New hair news. Yeah, my wife likes my hair short. So it's been 2 years since my son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And I, the first like couple months were really rough. And I didn't cut my hair because of that. Just as I was learning the new norm. And then it kind of got to this thing where it's like I hadn't cut it since that had happened, and it was finally time. My wife likes it short. Um, it was a good time to cut it. Now, sadly, I had dyed a little bit of it, so I couldn't give it to like Locks of Love, where there's a couple places that donate, but I couldn't do that because I had dyed a little bit of it. So I'm a little bit sad on that part, but yeah. All right, so this week we're changing it up a little bit. We have the cloud news. We have a little bit of, we have the cloud news that we're going to be talking about. There isn't there isn't a whole lot of security to go over. There is some security, but I think it's the stuff that's going to be most important to you, not just all the CVEs that I could find. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the cloud news and what I think is most impactful on that. Then after that, one thing that I want you guys to be thinking about right now is like the most exciting things in Wasm. I have a little bit of like Wasm 2.0 going over it. I know I haven't done any content on Wasm, but I do plan on doing something with it in the future, even if it's just me experimenting with Wasm and making a video out of a couple streams where I experiment with Wasm. But what I want to do is I want to cover kind of some of the things that I've seen. I have a couple articles on it, so we can talk about Wasm, what we're excited about, what we haven't liked so far, and kind of the future of it. On top of that, Backblaze did release their yearly stats on drives, so we're going to cover that, of course. I have a little bit on the big tech layoffs, and we're going to talk even more on that. A couple articles that I think are interesting to look over. I know Intel did something that I think is good and bad. They did two things, good and bad. So yeah, those are uh, those are the big things. And then at the very end of the stream, we're gonna go over Golang 120. I know that we talked about it. I went over the release notes myself, and we're gonna sit and talk about them a little bit. And I pulled up a Go Playground so we can experiment with some of the stuff if we want to. If we don't want to, that's fine as well. We can do whatever we want. Weeby Wizard, yep, I got a haircut. Hopefully everybody likes it. At the very beginning of this, I did explain the entire story, but basically, I looked at all the top YouTubers, and they're all very gorgeous to look at with their nicely styled hair. So that's really what's led it to me. This is my path to success, not better content, for sure. All right. Well, thanks, Weeby Wizard. Thank you very much. My wife likes it much better this way too. So we'll be keeping it short for a little while. All right. So security. What security? There's two big things in security that I saw. Two big things, and then we'll get into some other stuff. Um, Let's get to it. Let's get to it. All right. We have action needed for GitHub Desktop and Atom users. Now, Atom, I believe, has been deprecated. That's like their Visual Studio Code. So GitHub made Atom before they made Visual Studio, before they were acquired by Microsoft, and Atom has kind of gone away. I believe it's deprecated, but I'm not entirely sure. And if you use Atom, this is important. So basically, in February 2nd, 2023, we did discuss or in December 7th, 2022. I was going to say about 2 months ago. We did discuss that some code from GitHub Desktop and Atom were stolen. But on February 2nd, there was an update that everybody needs to be aware of because there were certificates used for signing. Now, they have revoked these certificates, but that actually means that the GitHub Desktop app for Mac will stop working on February 2nd. So if you use GitHub Desktop, I don't, I just use the command line. But if you do, then you're going to need to update your version of GitHub Desktop. That's basically what has happened. And the same goes with Atom. I think Atom had built-in GitHub support. And so this is going to require you to update. So if you notice your Git isn't working with Atom or with GitHub Desktop, both for the Windows and the Mac. Oh no, there is no desktop for Windows. I'm sorry. Real news here. It's only for the Mac. Only for the Mac and Atom. So there's that. They did say that there has been no evidence of misuse of this, but they're revoking the certificates, as a safety precaution. I don't know who that is. I'm going to take it as a compliment. I don't know who it is, though. Nathan Fillion? Gonna assume he's a good-looking, charming person. All right. Cloudflare's handling of a bug. So this is insecurity because it was a vulnerability because it allowed them to bypass network policies. So you can read on it. What I brought this up is this is classic Cloudflare blogging that I absolutely love. It also points out why IPv6 is difficult. So per IPv6 spec in this RFC 4038, you can actually embed IPv4 IP addresses in IPv6 address, which, is fantastic. Why this is a thing? Don't get me started on that. I think that if you go and read the RFC, I think there's actually some good reasons for this, for like dual stacks through here. And so I think this was mostly an attempt to make things easier in the transition phase, which we've been in for the last 20 years. But this caused a whole bug for Cloudflare. And what I love about this article is it goes into not only their response, which their response was fantastic. At the end of 3 hours, they had a patch that partially fixed it. It didn't fully fix it. And the next day they had a permanent fix ready that was testing in their prod and staging environments, and the permanent fix was merged a day later. And then they go down and they actually break down how to execute this attack on their systems. And they go into detail with code. Basically, this is the code that could be run on their worker, and what it would do and how it would exploit DNS records to basically call back to the host server that it was on without actually going through their IP filtering. So anyways, pretty cool. I'm gonna post this into chat. I know that usually I put the links down, but I'm gonna try to just IPv6 is legacy. I'm gonna just post the links into chat for everyone this now. I think that's how I'm gonna try it. So if you want to read more on this, go for this. If I do cover something and you're like, hey, I'd like the link to that, and it's not something I think is link worthy, leave message me. Just leave a comment. Not a comment, but a chat message. This is a live stream. All right. So I have two things that are also here in security that we can talk about that aren't really security. Three things. Sorry. Aren't really security, but they're kind of. Dashlane has come under some heat along with a lot of password managers. And one of the things they're trying to do for transparency is release their source code for their client apps. This is not their server, this is their client apps. Now, I want to warn everybody, I looked through these. I didn't email them. I can try to email. No one ever responds to my emails, so there's that. But I was looking through what they released, and I noticed something strange. If you click on View License, these are released under the Creative Commons non-attribution, non-commercial license. I've really only seen this used for artwork, not code. So I don't really know what this means. Like, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not giving you legal advice. I honestly am confused myself as to exactly what this means to code. So use it at your own risk. I mean, I think they're not putting it out there for people. They're not looking to build a community. They're not looking for that. They're doing it for transparency, which I think honestly is a fine way to release, or a fine reason to release something. It doesn't all have to be for open source. I think I would like to applaud them on this. Now, I think it would be greater if they made it open source so people could use them. Sure, I do. But this is fine. I think you just have to be careful about the license. So far, Bitwarden has not gotten back to me about my count iterations. It would be the top thing that I would, the iterations for their hashing on their passwords. I will let you know as soon as I get an email back from them. I actually just registered a domain, so I'm a little bit more official. I am rebranding everything to Null Labs. I like it. I want to do experiments. I want to learn. I want to experiment with some code, experiment with some projects, and learn while doing it. And so I actually really like Null Labs. So I am going to rebrand with that. Got myself a domain. Gonna get a real email behind that, and maybe if I email them with that instead of just some Gmail account, I will get a faster response, or a response at all. I don't blame them. They probably get a lot of things. So this is not a knock on companies. I'm a nobody emailing them about their about their things. So there was a big non-change in Git. This isn't really security. This is more cloud news. I'm going to move it over. We'll talk about this later. I don't know why this was here. All right. Last piece of security news that I thought was interesting that we should talk about was abusing exceptions for code execution part 2. Now, this person actually ended up getting hired by Microsoft based off of their part 1, which is kind of really cool because they did a really good job. It is estimated to be a 50-minute read, and that is not wrong. I am not going to go over the whole thing, but I am going to post the link for you guys. If you all would like to get a little bit smarter, read what this person has to say. Both of these, part 1 and part 2, are fantastic. Part 1 is much shorter. Part 2 goes into a lot of background and a lot of in-depth on how to do this. So, anyways, it is basically abusing exceptions. So you know how like languages will throw exceptions and stuff, to then remotely execute code, which is amazing because one of the things that he gets into is that then it is um, much harder to track down because it's in the unwinding of the call stack. So anyways, this was really cool. I loved reading this. I am not all the way through it. I'm like bypassing security cookies. I'm in this portion right here. Okay, I'm right here actually. Are all compilers impacted? This is where I've stopped. I got up to here. So there's a lot more even I have to read. As you can see, this goes on. So, anyways, thought it was really cool. You should definitely check it out if you like, especially if you're into that type of stuff. And that's it for security. That's all I have. Next, I have some cloud stuff to talk about. We have some. There's one big change in Azure that I really want to talk about because I think it could be confusing. I like why they're doing it. They're actually doing it to make it more clear, more evident. I think that could be confusing if you're not ready for it. Other than that, there was also one thing around GitOps from GCP that I'm actually going to have to get my hands on to understand how I like it. So we'll let's just jump into it. AWS App Config expands encryption capabilities, integrating with AWS Secret Manager and AWS KMS, Key Management Store. So this is Key Management Service, not store. Sorry. So basically, App Config, if you're using it, it now integrates with these two services, which is going to allow you to have better control over your secrets. So a lot of vulnerabilities are from people mismanaging their secrets, and so any and all improvement to this type of thing here is really, really important. So I'm definitely appreciating the drive towards some of these security based things, and you should definitely be looking at using this if you're using AWS App Config. Amazon increases NAT Gateway's capacity to support concurrent connections to a unique destination. So you can configure NAT gateways to support 44,000 concurrent connections to a unique destination by adding multiple IP addresses to the same NAT gateway. This is one of those things. I'm pretty sure if you've had the problem, you're in like a very niche group of people. But if you're in that group of people, this could be massive. I've never been in this group of people, so that's the scale I don't work at. So anyways, yeah, there's that. And that was really all I saw from AWS over the last week. Did you guys see anything else? Really, if you did see something, you guys should feel free to shout it out, post a link in the chat. I will be checking those and checking chat as we go. Let's talk about Azure. This is the thing that I think could be confusing if people weren't expecting it and weren't ready for it. So the general availability of Azure Kubernetes I got so excited about it, I got choked up. Azure Kubernetes Service introduces two pricing tiers, free and standard. Now, what they're talking about isn't the Kubernetes, it isn't the nodes that you're running. It is the control plane. This is all around the control plane. And so what they're doing here is AKS, or Azure's Kubernetes Service, has a free tier where you don't pay for the control plane, but you also don't get an SLA for it. So originally, it was all one thing, and you could just not pay for the control plane, but you also didn't get the SLA. And if you wanted an SLA, you basically put an SLA feature, which then ran you a multiple node control plane, which is the high availability, whatever blah, 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 blah. So I think this is actually going to clear stuff up. There's actually a free tier that doesn't charge you for the control plane. And then there's a different tier for clusters with a highly available control plane. I think that this is actually a good thing. I do feel like it could be confusing if all of a sudden. So I think that these free tier is actually going to be really useful for CI/CD pipelines, for dev clusters. There's actually probably a whole bunch of uses where you don't need to pay the extra $80, $70, $80 for that SLA and don't care. Your pipelines, your dev clusters, all of those just don't need that power. Now, there is a little bit more than just an SLA. It turns out that without the SLA, you can't hit their 5,000 node maximum per cluster. It doesn't actually say what the maximum size is of the free tier for nodes. You're still paying for those nodes, so the free tier is a little confusing. It's just free control plane. But it says it's recommended for clusters with less than 10 nodes. What is the maximum? I don't know. I couldn't find it. I dug through some of their pricing tiers. I didn't see a maximum anywhere. So, anyways. Yes, actually, I don't know that I know about GCP, but I also think Azure released slowing growth. Still growth in both, but slowing. Yes. I believe that was the same for Azure. You know what? I need to pull up all of the cloud's revenue data. I think that would be a good one to go over in the news at some point. We just had a bunch of them release. I'll have to look when Google's is. But I don't think that Google actually breaks out GCP from stuff, so it depends on how they break it out on how I'll be able to do it. Anyways. So the general availability of Microsoft Azure load testing is now generally available. I think this is a big deal. I've always said load testing is really important, especially if you have a critical app that you, especially if you have peaking scale. So I used to work at a company that did back of house kitchen software, and this would have been a huge boon to us, because the thing with our scaling was that our scaling was like, is it Valentine's Day? If it is, everything was burning down. Every single engineer worked 24 hours because we had to because it was hard for us to test that type of load because it never happened any other time. But we always knew that on Valentine's Day, that was going to happen. And this was before Kubernetes, so that it really did suck, actually. Elastic Beanstalk is powerful, but not that powerful. Maybe it was just us. But anyways, but we also had extreme scaling at dinner. So anyways, this load testing is going to allow you to see how your application scales and handles increased load. So I think it's pretty good. Pretty cool. New storage backend for durable functions. I've never used durable functions. I don't know what these mean in Azure. But they have new storage providers, so that's cool. So if you are using their durable functions, this sounded interesting and cool for anybody that's interested in it. Like I said, I'm guessing durable functions are ones that aren't stateless. They're like stateful statelessness. So I'm really actually confused by them. I need to go look into them. We'll be doing that later. General availability of Azure Functions, support for Node.js 18. So for those of you who are using Azure Functions, it now supports Node 18. And that's it for Azure. Now we have Google. Google had a couple things, more than usual, I think. There's one that is going to need more detailed digging from me, but I'm interested in seeing it. I'm interested in them doing it. I didn't actually expect to see this per se. That's the Managed Kubernetes configuration at scale using the new GitOps observability dashboard. All right, so this is a lot of buzzwords. This is a lot about it. Managed Kubernetes, configuration at scale, GitOps observability dashboard. I mean, this really is. You put this on your resume, hired, even in a bad economy. But the premise is actually kind of cool. Now, we have been working with some Argo CD. If you haven't watched the live stream, I destroyed my cluster, finally got it working again. And Argo CD does a pretty good job of seeing observability into your deployment. It's one of the biggest reasons that I prefer Argo over something like Flux. Flux is a little simpler, but it has less observability. So observability is pretty important. So the dashboard focuses on overall status of configurations and resources across one or multiple clusters. So this is really looking at their Kubernetes, their managed Kubernetes clusters, and it's looking at the resources on them. So as I see it right now, I haven't gotten to play with it. It looks kind of like an Argo CD dashboard built into GKE. These are Git repositories, Helm charts, and OCI registries that contain cluster configuration resources that are synced across clusters. So yeah, I am interested in a cloud supporting GitOps better. Actually, that's one of the things that I want the Null Cloud to do. I want it to be a GitOps first. That's like how I want you to interact with the Null Cloud, is through GitOps. Like, I think that would be really cool. Everything is just GitOps, and it just does the complicated GitOps and management for you. I think that's the way a cloud should go. I know people like ClickOps, but ClickOps suck to manage. All right, yeah, Google Cloud missed forecast, but is still growth over the right. I feel like everyone was still growth. It was just slower growth. That's my understanding of the cloud in the last quarter. You know what though? I do think next news that will be one of the things I will actually bring those up. Maybe even open up a Google sheet and graph it out for people so they can see exactly what it means. Because I haven't done that. But my understanding of the ones that I have seen and ones I have looked at, except for Intel, which we will talk about Intel in a little bit, that's what I understand of it so far. So, anyways, I'm interested to watch this. I'm interested in watching this. All right. Other than that, there wasn't a whole lot of other things here. This is the biggest one that I've seen is the Global External HTTPS Load Balancer and Cloud CDN now support advanced traffic management using flexible pattern matching. So their CDN is their content delivery network. So their load balancing and content delivery network has more powerful pattern matching for you to use. So if you're heavily using that, great. It included extra caching policies, so that's also really great. And here's some of the articles on it. I was reading up on it just a little bit to understand it a little bit better. And it does seem like they really made it a lot more powerful. It actually seemed a lot of the stuff they added, I was surprised they didn't already have. We'll just put it that way. But it's good to see them making this better, making their content delivery network even better. All right. Google's was better growth, not as good as expectation, due to very optimistic CEOs. I feel like every tech company or some of these big tech companies are having their Netflix moment. Like when you or I say Facebook and Netflix are kind of my big ones. When there are let's say 3 billion families. I don't know how many distinct like households there are, but let's say there's 3 or 4 billion distinct households. And you have like 2.5 billion subscriptions. There's just not more people to sell it to. Like, it's just. And I think cloud is going to have that at some point where it's like, yeah, people were migrating. And so their growth was astronomical at first because you had these large companies migrating. You had your, I almost said your Oracles, but I'm pretty sure not Oracle. But you had your Adobes, you had your Netflixes, you had your whatnot companies that migrated from their own data centers and either migrated in full or did like a hybrid strategy. And you got like this big growth, but eventually everyone's in the cloud. And that means only really new workloads are going to increase your work or increase your revenue, which I think will be harder than just people shifting over. And you know what, Russell? I think that's a fair point that people need to realize. These CEOs have never been through this. They have literally never. They didn't have the 2008, 2009, didn't affect these tech CEOs. And not excusing all their behavior. Absolutely not. Some of these have handled them very badly, very, very poorly. Not excusing all of them. But a lot of them are not, I could say probably didn't expect this. They've been a CEO for 20 years, never had to deal with this. That was never their problem. And so I can, I understand a little. All right. Wasm. Wasm 2.0. Let's talk about Wasm. Did you guys think of anything? What was your favorite Wasm thing? Or are we still talking clouds? You guys tell me. Either put your favorite Wasm thing in release 2.0 or tell me something interesting about the cloud that you missed. I'll sit here and wait. I'm not in a rush. I'm now holding you guys hostage. Then the joke's on me because you can just walk away. You thought Wasm 2.0 was just a draft. So behind on the times. It's like you should have a good news outlet. Now, I actually don't know that Wasm 2.0 is an official release yet. There is kind of the initial release, and then there's been a lot of work coming up to right now. I consider anything after the initial release work on Wasm 2.0. That's my statement. I don't know if that's technically true. I don't think that there's a Wasm 2.0 spec. You can find on Wasm, the WebAssembly's github.io page, a change history since the release of 1.0. So this is what I'm talking about. And they have all the but I was going to go through some of these. This is actually one that I was going to talk about. We can open up this. This was just their changes. Yeah. Yeah. I was just talking about some of their changes. Basically, the change history from the release of 1.0. Just kind of to cover where it's come from since then. But I wanted to open it up to you all to let me know if there was something that you were particularly excited about in the future, maybe in the Spec 2.0, or if there is something that has been released since 1.0 that you guys really were excited about. So obviously we have some, there's performance. Wasm is actually, I originally thought when Wasm was being talked about that it was actually going to be more performant than JavaScript because JavaScript. It's generally not as fast a lot of the time. And I don't know if that's because there hasn't been years of optimizations done on it like there has been with JavaScript, or if it's just inherently that way. I don't know. Time will tell on that one. I don't think the performance is anything to worry about. I've seen plenty of tests that are close to JavaScript levels, so. All is in the networking, getting networking sorted. I think I agree that that's pretty exciting. I actually have. We're going to talk about this Docker and Wasm. I actually got to play around with it a little bit. This is interesting. We need to talk about this because I'm on the fence on whether this is exciting or horrifying. I'm not entirely sure. But we'll talk about it. And actually, I think it has interesting implications for Aura. I know that's a thing that we've talked about, but we'll get into it. Okay, well, cool. This is one that I'm interested in is the multiple memories for Wasm. And basically this is to enable you to share memory with like JavaScript, for example, in a safe way. AKA, you don't want to share everything in your application. That could just not be safe. But you want to be able to share a portion for some cross communication, some collaboration. And so this is going to allow your code to collaborate a little bit. This is kind of like Zoom for your application, for your Wasm one. I think it's a cool concept, and I'm kind of interested in it. I think that this has some interesting things for plugins and some things like that. But yeah. So you brought up Wash. I call it Wasi, but I don't know how other people pronounce it. And yeah, I had this one already prepared, like I could read your mind. Create WebAssembly System Interface, or WASI, node pools in Azure Kubernetes Service to run your WebAssembly Wasm workload. Preview. So this is preview. There is no guarantees from Azure. Run these at your own risk. All right, so this is WASI here, the WebAssembly System Interface. It's a modular system interface for WebAssembly as described in the initial announcement. It's focused on security and portability. WASI is being standardized as a standard, a subgroup of the WebAssembly group. All right, so you can go to the initial announcement if you want to read more about it. But basically, this is one of the big things to push WebAssembly past the browser. Beyond the browser, because it provides a fast, scalable, secure way to run the same code across all machines. And this is kind of what then AKS and Docker are pointing at. So, what if when you told the kubelet to run something, it didn't run a container? What if it ran Wasm? That's basically what Docker and AKS are doing here. Docker and AKS are pushing that very, very hard, where it doesn't need to be a container. It can be a Wasm. Now, I don't know if I'm excited or terrified by this. Personally, to me, a container already does that. But I do think it has some interesting implications, especially for a cross-platform application. So I do like this. Now, in a Kubernetes application, This is where I start to get a little less. I'm not sure how useful that is. Most of the time, my front end code isn't my back end code, and my back end code can run in any old container, and it doesn't need to be WASI. It could even be WASM inside of a container, I guess, but that would be weird. Don't do that. So I'm not sure. What do you guys think about this? I know that Russell's pretty excited about this. I'm tentatively excited. And that's all Docker Wasm is. Originally, when I announced that they announced this, I was confused as to exactly what it is, but basically this is where you tell Docker to run something. If it's a container, it runs it in containerd. If it's Wasm, it runs it in Wasm. And so Wasm is now your new container, your new application container. And that's what it is. Thoughts? All right. Well, you guys are very enthusiastic about Wasm. I guess we should pick a better topic for next week. It'll hopefully be more secure than containers. Why do you say that? Well, I understand the implications of containers and the fact that, they don't technically have any hard memory bounds or things like this, so that you can actually attack other containers from your containers. And this is why things like gvisor exist in the first place. I don't, and this is probably my lack of understanding of Wasm. I don't know that Wasm really solves this either, though. But I could be wrong. You have to use Linux process level security mechanisms properly protect them. Yes. Agreed. For both. I think we have a real sandbox though, Russell. We have a real sandbox. I'm sorry, let me introduce you to my little friend from 1959. I don't know when it was created. I just made up a date. I'm sorry. Oh. I'm looking it up. Is there a date? I don't. It's over 10 years old. So here is your pure sandbox. Oh, you want a lightweight. So there was a revision to the KVM. Let me find that. There you go. Here's your lightweight. I don't know that Wasm is going to be as good as a VM. And so, I am mostly teasing with you. But I'm not sure that running under the same kernel you can ever get as good of. Firecracker is about as light as a hippo. I'm just, and maybe I'll be wrong, and I'd be happy that if we can provide the same level of siloedness as a VM, I will be ecstatic. I will be the first one to shout its praises. I'm just not sure that we can do that while sharing the same kernel. I feel like the memory bounds are just one of the problems that aren't going to be easily solved without doing something in the Linux kernel itself, which then could actually solve it for containers as well. as gvisor does. Gvisor's performance is terrible garbage, but they do solve the memory bounds problem. You did say hoping. You did. I'm sorry. I did not mean to represent what you were saying. I guess I don't have high hopes for that, but yeah. Git did release some stuff that I think that you guys might find interesting. Their first was basically a unrelease of Git. So if you notice this, I didn't see any effect on mine, so I don't think they actually did it, but they said a recent change. So anyways, they released this and then they retracted it. The default comparison for Git archives has recently changed. As a result, archives downloaded from GitHub may have different checksums, even though the contents are completely unchanged. This is kind of appalling. I think they got a lot of backlash over this. So we are reverting this change for now. More details to follow. Basically, what happened is that the checksums that they made for your source zip files wouldn't match anymore. A lightweight and secure execution engine or wide-scale IPv6 adoption, which happens first? Yeah, I'm going with a lightweight and secure execution engine. I'm going to go with you. I don't know about I think we're going to adopt IPv7 before we get 6. Anyways, they're returning the change for now. They did say more details to follow. They haven't released anything past this as of yet, so there's nothing more for me to report at this point, but something's going on. Obviously, I think basically my guess from reading this is they found a way to make the things smaller, basically. Zip them better. Checksums won't match anymore. That's my guess. Is that they found a way to compress them have a higher compression or more efficient, so it will cost them less. And they made the change, got a huge blowback, and now they're reverting it until they can find a good way to remediate that. The other thing that they did is roadmaps and projects are now in public beta. So I've just started using GitHub roadmaps a little bit, but they actually have roadmaps for your project. So I know in the Kubernetes, they've started to use the planning in GitHub, and I like that it's beside the code. It's very featureless, very featureless, but they've launched roadmaps, which is kind of cool because it takes all the things that you were already tracking in GitHub, all the issues and whatnot, and you can actually put them on a roadmap. So I think that this is nice. And I think this will be huge for open source projects who want to publish a roadmap but don't want to publish a website or things like that. This will kind of be kept up to date automatically. So I think that's pretty cool. IPv awesome. Docker Compose. You know what? I like Docker Compose. Version 2 has been out for a little bit. And version 1 is getting shelved. Now, I don't use Docker Compose very much. I don't even have it installed on my Linux computer. But I think that it's a pretty good tool if you don't use something like Tilt or some of those other things. So if you have something that requires a little orchestration, you need a database in the back end to be testing and you want that spun up, or you have two applications like Redis and you want to test that locally, this is a pretty simple solution for that. And one of the biggest things that I wanted to point out was this using SSH resources. So basically, they now allow you to include SSH resources in your Compose. So if your container or things like that need to pull a Git repo or something like that, they now can. So anyways, I think that's a huge improvement for the Compose v2. And if you haven't used Compose and are trying to do something like that where you're scheduling more than one thing, but you don't want to run a whole Kubernetes instance, this is pretty great. Oh, they say that this happens every few years? I had not heard that. That could be my bad though. Oddly, I've never really released software on GitHub, so I've never run into this, but that very well could be a thing. Now, Oracle has been releasing a pricing update, and I have never read about it being a thing before, so, but that could just be me. If it happened like 6 years ago, I wouldn't have known. Oracle is releasing an update to Java pricing list, and they've claimed it to be a good thing. They've made this universal subscription. Oracle's sneaky though. I actually think that this might not be a good thing. And again, I don't do a whole lot of Java. I don't have a Java SE license, but what I did notice is that they used to have two subscriptions. Basically, one for developers that was pretty cheap. So you got, developers for $1, and then your servers that ran the Java Enterprise for $100. And now they don't. They don't distinctify. They don't make that distinction. So now your developers are actually paying more, and you're a little bit cheaper on your servers. So this, if you are only running a few servers but you have a lot of developers, this could actually cost you more. Now, I don't know for certain. I don't follow this a whole lot, but that's one of the things that I saw with that. Yeah, I don't use Java either. I don't use Java either, but I try to be unbiased in reporting my news. So if I see something I think is newsworthy, I report it for all of you. I generally make fun of both Oracle and Java, sometimes simultaneously. They ruined one of my dreams of working at Sun Microsystems. Back when I was a kid, I thought they were cool. Oh, I'm totally not unbiased in my comments. I try to cover everything in as unbiased way, but my comments are my own and are biased for sure. All right, the community came to me with a new piece of tech that is never ending, and I thought you all should see it, but we're not going to see it just yet. We're not going to see that just yet. We'll cover that just before the good old Golang. So let's jump into drive stats. Blackblaze drive stats for 2022. If you're looking at buying a new drive, I would check out here. Now, there was no standouts to me except for this Seagate drive here. This 14 terabytes, definitely don't get it. It seems to be failing quite a bit. Another thing that I would like to see Backblaze do is to not refer to their drive's age in months. This always annoys me when parents, after 11 months of age, don't refer to your child in months. When somebody's like, yeah, they're 39 months old, and I'm like, I'm not gonna do that math right now. I don't know what that is. I don't want to calculate what 92.5 months is. I don't know. I don't know what it is. So that's something a little misleading when you're reading over these that you need to understand. When you see something like this 5.7 here, you have to understand how many drive days that it has. And the drive days is how many they've had times how many days they've had it. So if they had 1 for 100 days, that would be 100 drive days. If they had 2 for 100 days, that would be 200 drive days. And so this can really affect it because as the drives get older, they obviously fail more often. And one of their things is to, replace them when they're failing too much. As you can see, they've only had a few of these, only 1,500, but they have quite a few drive days on them. So I'm guessing that these are pretty old drives. That's my understanding on them. So there's a lot that goes into reading these charts by Backblaze, but they're also pretty fun to go over. Did I go over these when I picked my drives for my NAS? Absolutely. I was trying to make the best drive. I was like, see this 0.94? That's the one I want. That, you know, decent number of them running for a decent number of drive days. Yeah. Yeah. So, anyways, they're interesting metrics. Stop using months, use years. Is there something about the ratio of platter size to significant chance of drive failure? Yes, SSD. No, I'm just joking. Not that I saw through this. I didn't read every word. I looked at some of the graphs through some of it. There was a couple like this one, but then you have to also look at like drive count. They didn't have very many drives, so this could just be an anomaly. It could be a bad batch. It could be whatnot. So here you can see this is their failure rates by manufacturer. So this would say that the WDC is by far the best, but they also have the fewest number of them. So I don't know if that's a good comparison. All right, let's talk about Intel. I think they did a good thing and they did a bad thing. They could have done two good things, in my opinion. Now, I'm not a shareholder of Intel, but if I was a shareholder of Intel, this is what I would have pushed for them to do. I don't know. But if they did sell their business, you could still buy a Toshiba drive, right? Because they sold their business. So it's like ThinkBook or ThinkPad or ThinkBooks, yeah, whatever they are called, got sold to Lenovo, but Lenovo still makes them because they sold them. I'm not sure. Ah. All right. So, what did they do good? What did they do bad? The thing that they did good was, well, this wasn't good, but they had an absolute failure of a quarter. All right. But what I think they did really well is this: quarterly pay bonuses are gone, annual bonuses are being paused, and 401k matches have from 5 to that's not the good part. That's bad. And I mean that stinks for the people. The company is really hurting. What I think they did well is everyone is getting a pay cut. But they did it in a way that hurts the top that's more responsible for it more. So you know what I like about this means no layoffs. They didn't make layoffs to do this. They kept their people around. And now this is still a bad situation, but they did this. And Pat is taking a 25% cut. So I like how this was done. Now what they did bad was they didn't cut their dividend. That was the bad thing. Because as if I was an investor, which I'm not, what I would have liked them to do is take care of their people, because I understand that if Intel is to move forward, Intel has to actually beat AMD. And that's not going to happen with people that are looking for a new job. AMD did well. They're probably still hiring. And so what you need to do is cut executive leadership 15% and Pat 25%. Leave everybody else the exact same. Cut the dividend. Cut your dividend. Either all together. I believe Ford did this back in 2008, where they cut it all together and then they reinstated it. Cut it for a year or two. and be like, we won't pay a dividend until we get our feet under us. I do like that they didn't go for the layoff approach. I would prefer to take a 10% and everybody on my team gets to stay working than to fire 2 people from the team so the rest of us can. That's maybe me personally, but I would prefer that. I think, yeah. So, anyways, Intel's having a rough time. PayPal is also going to lay off 2,000 employees. Now, I didn't see. They said it would affect all the employees, but they didn't actually go into detail of how many of that were going to be engineering. Just that it was going to, as well as Salesforce is also having this happen. So yeah, there's some more layoffs coming. I think some of these people might have preferred a pay cut. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. A staggering number that I found was that big tech is going to have 10 billion in job cuts. So basically, they're going to pay severance for $10 billion. What I find interesting is, does Google plan on not hiring for another year? Because basically, that's what Google has to do to start recouping any price. They have to not hire for a year. Or if they do hire, then they really shot themselves in the foot with all their severances. PayPal only has negative news these days. Yeah, I would agree. PayPal has really shot themselves in the foot a lot of times. Like, I know that a lot of people don't want to use PayPal. GitHub, for example, now they didn't say why they weren't supporting it, but GitHub sponsors no longer supports PayPal. Nobody likes dealing with PayPal. And so in a bad economy, PayPal has just made itself. Yeah. PayPal has just shot itself in the foot. You know what I really wish I had seen, which I'm not seeing, is Salesforce is always talking about being. I like the CEO, at least what I've seen from the CEO, where he really wants to treat his employees right. I would have liked him to, instead of cutting employees, push back on investors, cut executive pay to cover those employees. Maybe if you have to still reduce the pay of some employees, fine. But because it's a fault in leadership, the leadership should be paying the larger brunt of that cost. Yeah, I would have liked to seen that from him. I think personally, that's how I would like to see things happen. When I'm in that situation, I don't see it as, oh, the company wants to cut my pay, especially if the CEO or my boss is getting their pay cut even more. I see it as, they kept me around. They understand. They're going to take care of me, especially if the economy is bad. So that was the layoff news for the week. Intel really had a very. This was surprising to me. I didn't think Intel would be this bad. I know that AMD has been chipping into their server business. It was really rough for them. I know AMD has been also. Think about like Graviton. I wasn't thinking about this, but Graviton is taking away from their server business. These things are taking away from their server business, which was one of their big money makers. Yeah, worst case, you get paid a little less while you're looking for somewhere else. Or, what I'd like to do, like, if it was me and I was in Salesforce position, I would, the CEO is probably rich enough. I would say, hey, I'm not taking any salary, for one. And then if I did have to cut employees, I would say for the next 6 months, we're going to, take a 20 or your 10% reduction, whatever the number is. But at 6 months, it's going to go back unless if we have to make this extension again. Like, make it a thing where it's automatically going to go back after 6 months, unless if we have to make another extension because it's not working out. And that's actually another good point. Not only do we have AMD biting into it, not only do we have Graviton biting into it, we have a whole cloud sector slowing. Azure, GCP. GCP was still beating, just not up to their expectations, I guess. And Azure also slowdowns in their growth, which is called sloth. When your growth is slowing, it's sloth. That's going on a shirt. Be prepared for some sloth. Yeah, it's not a great time to be in CPUs. Personal computing is also slowing. You got some sloth there. I need to stop coming up with words. All right, I found this interesting. The United States District Court of Southern District of New York. So basically, an engineer is suing Facebook. Now we can go through this. Slothation. Really good technical analysis from me today. Anyways, we can go through this whole thing, but basically what they allege is that Facebook purposefully drained people's batteries or gave them bad performance, slower load pages, page load times, and things like that. As basically negative testing, which I don't know. I'm kind of torn by this because it's powerful information to know how long a page load takes and what effect it has on the people staying around for the content. They actually found that one of the things that came out of this was like, if there was a right amount of time for an image to load, if it was too fast, which blew my mind, but if it was too fast, that caused people to move on to faster. The amount of data that they got from these types of negative tests were awesome. And battery was one of them, which I find interesting because I know that I've heard people complain about Facebook draining their battery. Now I'm thinking, was that on purpose? Or did they write a really crappy app? That's what I always assumed, is that they wrote a crappy app. All right, this came from the community, although I also did see it myself. This is an interesting one. Here is Datadog allegedly asked developers to kill open source data export tool. So OpenTelemetry is this thing that's coming to... did I see the Twitter API pricing? Yes, we can talk about Twitter API pricing. We will talk about Twitter API pricing. Now, there was... We'll talk about Twitter API pricing. This is also a scandal to be had. Basically, Datadog came out with this after the news broke about this, basically reaffirming their commitment to OpenTelemetry. But it looks like they actually kept an OpenTelemetry export tool, basically from being, or plugin, from being committed, that would allow you to export OpenTelemetry from Datadog. And I actually appreciate the developer here, because I think this is something people have not focused on. And this is from Dorman, the developer. There was nothing to be resolved. I stand by what's in the pull request, which is that I closed it. No guns to my head, out of professional courtesy. So a lot of people, I think, got in that Datadog tried to threaten to sue him or anything like that, and he came out and said absolutely not. That's not what happened. They asked me to close it. He said okay, because they said that they were committed to OpenTelemetry. He closed it. A year passed, and they still hadn't supported exporting to OpenTelemetry, and so he reopened it. He explained, I also reopened it, no guns to my head. For the reason Grafana mentioned, I am happy it is merged and happy to be moving on to other things. So I think this was actually a lot of hype for maybe not too much. I mean, obviously, Datadog asked them not to have it, and they successfully kept this for a year from their customers, from people, and so that is a big deal. But it wasn't like some of those people that actually tried to bully people. He wasn't bullied. I think that's an important thing to go across. Datadog didn't, per the other person's word, didn't try to bully him, which is important to me at least. Datadog did reaffirm their commitment to OpenTelemetry. They didn't specify this, but you can read between the lines. We're all adults here. They did ask though, and let me be clear. That asking was wrong. I'm not defending them in that. They asked, and they shouldn't have. They should have been supporting it. 100%. 1000%. Let me be clear. That's not what I was implying at all. I think that of the grievances that some of these companies make, that's a smaller. I guess I'm not as upset about it as I initially was, because sometimes these companies actually threaten you with legal and things like that, where they can literally bury you in legal stuff and keep you from doing those things. So, but the asking was still wrong, so they deserve some annoyance. If you use Datadog and you have a salesperson, let them know that you're annoyed. That would be good. All right. I know that we've been doing some machine learning. This was given to us from the community. Watch forever. This is AI generated Seinfeld. It's horrible. And it goes on and on and on. It's straight up Seinfeld. They only trained it on Seinfeld. I'm not that I've watched a lot of this. I left it on for like an hour or two while I was working on some other stuff. I was reading some of the news and stuff. But it's pretty much straight up trained on Seinfeld. I had to bring it up because you guys brought it up. This is the worst. Oh. I'll put a link just in case you guys want to watch me forever. Not me, but that's what it has 10K viewers right now. That's right. It's so terrible. This Big Telemetry sponsoring this stream. I wish that, Datadog, do you want to sponsor this stream? No. Sadly, OpenTelemetry, Big Telemetry is not sponsoring this stream. There's only like 3 companies that could possibly sponsor my stream because there's only like 3 companies I haven't spoken poorly about. But I think that I give fair criticisms. I don't just hate on them for the most part. Maybe Oracle, but for the most part, I give fair criticism. And so hopefully companies can handle that in general, because I'm always going to give that. All right. That's it for the regular news section. Now, we have 2 things left. First, I have this Go. We're going to talk about Go 120. These are kind of some of the things that I wanted to do. And then second, I'd invite you to stick around. I'm going to try to find somebody to host. I know it's the Twitch thing to do, and I'm going to give it a try. So If you want to stick around, see who we land on, we will find somebody together to go host. I will not host Watch Me Forever, aka Seinfeld 2.0. Right. Oracle won't sponsor people anyways. They'd rather sue them. I do try to be most decent. I do. I try to be fair. You know, that's what I try to do. My loyalty is obviously to the viewer, so and I'm happy to call stuff out if I see it, but yeah. Even then, I try to be fair. I try to bring it to your guys' attention. So Oracle, we'll see. That's one that's definitely never hired me. But you know what? The thing is, I think I'd rather work at McDonald's. So that said, that being publicly said, let's move on. Let's talk about Go 120, and then we'll host somebody. Go 120 arrived 6 months after Go 119. Now, one thing that wasn't in the release notes that I think we should talk about is this, the arena proposal, the new package providing memory arenas. It is a hidden API, and it's not in their release notes. It should have been in the release notes. I found this, which was this uptrace, assuming that they know what they're talking about, seemed like a pretty good read on these. So let me actually put these memory arenas here. If you're wanting to understand them a little bit better. Now, this is like an experimental feature. So like you actually have to do go experiment equals arenas to actually compile. If you don't, this won't actually compile. This import arena won't compile. So it is just an experiment, but I think it's an interesting one to talk about. So as Go is garbage collected, and it can automatically free allocated objects for you, Go runtime achieve that by periodically running a garbage collection algorithm that frees unreachable objects. Such automatic memory management simplifies the writing of Go applications and ensures memory safety. However, large Go programs have to spend a significant amount of CPU time doing garbage collection. In addition, the memory usage is often larger than necessary because Go runtimes delay garbage collection as long as possible to free more memory in a single run. Memory arena sounds like you have to start something. Okay, so I find this particularly interesting because it was an Uber article. 1 second, let me actually find it. They had an article, and I actually gave this to you guys as my engineering blog of the week, but this was how we saved 70,000 cores across 30 mission critical services, large scale, semi-automated, Go garbage collection tuning. So this happened about a year ago. Yeah, December 22nd of 2021. So about a year ago. And I let you guys know because it was a fantastic article. And basically, if you actually read this, this describes a lot of what Go Arena is or is trying to help solve. Basically, large Go projects are very bad with memory. And this is 70,000 cores. We're talking about a lot of money. This is a good article, and I think you should read it. So let me jump this into the chat. So you should read this. But in the end, that's what this proposal for arenas is about. It's about solving this problem. Now, I haven't experimented with it, so it doesn't work in the Go playground. You can't just pop into a Go playground and test it out. This won't work. Just not going to work. So if you want to try it, you got to try it locally. We should try it locally. If you want to jump into a stream and ask to play around with it, I'd be happy to. It's an experiment that's out there. And yeah, it could make the performance much better. Now, the only real problem with this is Rust already solved this in an efficient way. It doesn't have a garbage collector. That's just more efficient. More efficient is more better. All right, let's move on to some other things in Go. Wait, did I? Yeah, I did do the uptrace. Okay, yep. So you guys have it. They did some, so in 117, they added the conversions from slice to array pointer, which is cool. But in 120, they extended this to allow conversions from a slice to an array. So I believe, yeah, I have this. Basically, it looks like this. I wrote this out. Now, one thing that you have to be careful of, so this is that if you do this, that's actually a panic at runtime. This fails hard. So you got to be really careful. You got to be really careful. This needs to be the same length as this for this to work, or it will panic. That's the only one I got to actually write an example for. So don't expect any more examples. My bad. They saved 70,000 cores. If I remember correctly, this was a year ago. They saved 70,000 cores by optimizing the garbage collector. So basically, cores kind of relate to machines for them. So they save 70,000. If there's 8 cores per machine, divide 70,000 by 8, and you get the number of machines. We could do it by 10, and then you could say they save 77,000 machines. Yep, CPU overhead while GCing. As well as there was memory constraints in there, so basically the garbage collector would try to push it off as long as possible, which made their apps run larger because they were trying to optimize for memory. So, anyways, the Go arenas look to actually work on solving that problem. That's and again, it's super experimental. That it's them messing around, trying stuff out to see how to solve it for real. Now, it's not a zero cost. You have to be careful about your arenas. You don't want to put something in the arena that's not going to survive. All right, jokes aside. There was FreeBSD RISC-V support. One thing I did want to point out here is this. As of Go 120, that will be the last release to work on Windows 7, 8, and Server 2008 and Server 2012. 121 and on are going to require at least Windows 10 or Server 2016. This is the same across the board for a lot of Go. So Darwin and iOS, this is the last one to support High Sierra and Mojave. And so you're going to need to upgrade to Catalina. So this is something to be aware of as you go forward. All right. So this is actually something that I think we need to dive a little bit more into. Comparable types and what they mean. So what happened is in release 118, they released generics. It's really almost Go v2. Now generics had some problems. First, they're super inefficient. Probably shouldn't use them. Now in 119, they solved some of the efficiency problems. But another problem that came from this was comparing comparable types. And basically, if you compared two generic types that happen to be interfaces and not concrete types, then their comparisons would fail. I believe, in short, this doesn't happen anymore through their interface type. That's my understanding of it, but I think we need to play around with it at some point in some stream, because that's my understanding of this, is that that comparison shouldn't fail. Shouldn't be a panic at runtime anymore. All right. So going on through here, there was, let's see. There's some updates to the Go command. So the directory Go root package no longer stores precompiled package archives. There's been improvements to the Go test JSON. I haven't dug too deep into any of those. I felt like there was another one that I'll check it in a little bit. I feel like there was another one. So there is like code coverage that's built in. So these could be, you can pass in with Go build and Go install. You can pass in a coverage flag that will build with code coverage instrumentation. So I think that a lot of this cover is new. Yeah. So basically, they're building coverage into Go itself. So that's nice for people that are really strict on coverage. So there were some improvements to the runtime. So the garbage collector internal data structures were reorganized to be more space and CPU efficient. About 2%. That's actually kind of a big deal, especially if you run microservices and are running hundreds of machines. This actually can be a big deal. This is actually pretty good too. The garbage collector behaves less erratically with respect to Go routine assists in some circumstances. I have seen this where the garbage collector can do some strange things and cause a lot of problems. This happens with all garbage collectors. They can hit some weird edge cases, and it usually is pretty bad. So yeah, anyways, and then yeah, we're adding coverage. So this is yeah, again, they're adding coverage kind of like they added the fuzzing in, what was that, 119. I really like that they added fuzzing. So did Rust, right? I believe Rust did. Don't quote me on that one. So yeah, they also added this crypto package. So they provide elliptic curve. I don't know how to pronounce that. Key exchanges over NIST curves. So pretty cool if you're trying to do something with that. And then this one is actually one that you'll see in Kubernetes all over the place, where they wrap other errors, and they actually built their own type to do this error wrapping. And basically, this is expanding support for error wrapping to permit an error to wrap multiple other errors. So this is kind of cool. And they added errors is and errors as functions that inspect errors that have wrapped multiple errors. So it's definitely worth checking out, especially if you're trying to. It's actually nice to be able to return multiple errors from some of these functions when it's applicable. Although I think that is usually a code smell. A lot of the time, I want to say that it's a code smell. But there are actually. It depends on how you use it. Your function shouldn't, but if your function is 3 calls in, then each one of those could return a different error, because the idea is that, well, you had this error, but maybe the other function that called it can try something different or do something else or fall back to something else, and maybe that failed. And so now you really have 2 errors that you need to return, why it failed the first time and why it failed the second time. Again, it's niche, but it is useful. Some HTTP response controller type provides access to extend per request functionality. I don't know much. I didn't read much into this reverse proxy. Okay. That's cool. So you have a reverse proxy rewrite hook. That's nice. So there were some updates to the internal libraries that, it's good to know about these. For one, you might notice the change. And so when you're using these and you update your Go language, it might not compile because, yeah, parse certificates are now stored across all clients actively using the certificate. That one doesn't really affect the interface, but they can. So I think that was about it. That was the big deals for those. Did you guys see anything else that you thought was a big deal? Go releases a new version about once every 6 months. I'd like to actually do a little bit better than I did today. I'm behind on this, so I just wanted to cover it and go on with it. I'd like to have a few more demos and actually use the code a little bit, and be prepared to do some of the things that are new in the release. I actually think maybe this Saturday, I might do like a Go generic. I've never actually really used Go generics. I've read over the spec. I've looked at some other people's code, but its performance has been bad enough until recently that I've never really used it in anything production wise. So we can experiment with it. But yeah, every 6 months is, at least the last ones have been every 6 months. I don't know if that's standard or if that's just how they've been doing it. But yeah, that's a pretty good picture too. I like that. Go generics and JavaScript elevator stream. I don't know which one's going to be more frustrating. Go generic. I think I've got the elevator API down. So I think I think I really struggled with I really struggled with that stupid API. Tell you what. All right. Let's find somebody to host. You hit level 10? Snap. All right. Let me. I don't know exactly how to do this. Let's see. Raid channel. That was useless. Do I just go to Twitch and then go to tech categories? All right, so I'm in science and technology here. I don't know how to raid from here. But let's find somebody. Okay. This person is building a Twitch bot in Python. You know, one second. I gotta get chat up over to the side. There we go. All right. Let's see. We need English. There's the live seismic monitor. There's not a whole lot of people streaming right now. find some code. There's our favorite. Wow, what a face. What a face. Check that out. They captured me at the perfect. Wow. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Not English, French. This guy's building a Twitch bot in Python. Okay. Now, can I just... No. How do I don't know. Ooh, I can react. I don't actually know how to raid, so I'm going to have to read how to raid. So we're not going to raid because it's Python. I don't know. I don't know that I can morally raid Python, but I would have if I knew how to. But I am not smart enough. There is on my dashboard, there's like a raid button, but then it only gave me the options to raid people that I subscribed to. So do I have to subscribe to the person to then be able to raid them? Doesn't seem right. Oh, I can just type it into the chat? Well. Whoops. I was looking for a smaller streamer. I couldn't find one, though, that spoke English and was actually doing software. There's not a whole lot going on. Oh, wait. This one. It says Ruby, but you know what? 2 viewers. I don't know them, but I'm gonna... We're gonna try to raid this person. This person right here. It's gonna be an experimental raid. I think they're doing effective testing in RSP. Ooh, it is Ruby. You know what? We're gonna set aside. We're gonna set aside biased today, and we're going to raid a Ruby developer. Yeah, Russell, please be nice. All right, 1 second. I gotta get back to my Twitch chat. All right, here we go. They don't allow raids, so raid failed. Raid failed. You know what? The only other person was the guy with like 100 viewers, which then I feel weird because like we're not in the same leagues. So like I will try again next time. I'm going to keep trying, but I at least know how to do it. So, anyways, thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for joining me in my experiment with on Twitch, and I'll see you guys on Tuesday.